I was bitterly disappointed because having been in the ATC, Air Training Corps, for several years, I was in the grammar school, local grammar school. I was hoping then to have gone into the armed forces.
Yeah.
Could have gone into the RAF or into the army or for the navy perhaps.
Yeah.
But coroner papers came, and I had to report to Oakdale Training Centre for 1 month, and then I could be allocated then to any colony in the country. So.
The Forgotten Conscript is my latest project, but it's been my passion since 2008 when I discovered the story of the Bevin Boys. So it's taken this long for me to get to this point of making my own trailer, because to be honest, trying to get this story out there has been difficult. I think they're called the Forgotten Conscripts for a reason. Okay, the Forgotten Conscript first came about from a very good friend of mine, a Bevin Boy, Warwick Taylor, who died in October. And he died before he could see the trailer, which was really upsetting for me. There are not many left, and I just want to get the story out there. The plot is about 5 Bevin boys from all different aspects of life. So you have the son of an earl, who's actually got a twin brother. So one of them gets the Air Force, the other gets the coal mines, and he refuses and ends up in jail. That's his story. Then we have a blacksmith from Devon, who gets transferred to the South Wales coal mines. We have a rather gentle accountant from Oxford who ends up being sent down the coal mines. We have the son of a coal miner. And then we have a rather naughty lad who's married, with his wife expecting a baby, and he was praying that he would get sent out to France so he could get away from it all, but he gets the coal mines as well.
I'm Mr. Griffiths. I'm the pit manager, and well, he's very fastidious. He likes to keep a clean pit, if that makes sense. He likes people to pick up after themselves. This all stems back to his brother having an accident down the pit, and obviously he doesn't want that history to repeat itself then. So he's a bit OCD, I suppose.
And my character is Morris. He's a character who's actually from a fairly well-off background. He's very posh. His brother and he were both air cadets. They both wanted to join the RAF, and whilst his brother gets to join the RAF, Morris goes down the pit and he hates it.
As part of my research, I interviewed 5 Bevin boys back in 2009. Voice interview, not video interview. So I've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, between 10 and 12 hours of interviews with these Bevin boys. I'm hoping to use some of their answers for voiceovers on my trailer, if I can make it fit. Now, one of the interviews I did was with my good friend Warwick Taylor, who wrote a book called The Forgotten Conscript, hence the title of my TV series. And when Warwick wrote this all those years ago, it's a factual thing about the Bevin boys, just, the history of them really, and it became my Bible for the background information I needed. When I interviewed Warwick back in 2009, I asked him if I could call my TV series The Forgotten Conscript, and he said yes, so that's nice. So I knew I was going to make my very first film, which was a World War I film, Letters Home, and I needed a trench. So I knew there was one over in Suffolk, but I also knew that there was one somewhere in Wales. So I Googled, came up with more of a bay adventure. For Letters Home, I think the success of the small film shoot was the organisation. A hell of a lot had to go into organising not just the actors, but the locations, the costumes, the getting weapons. We got original World War I rifles were used for the 3 principal actors. Now, none of the cast and crew were paid, so of course this could always be a problem, that if something paid come up, they would leave. But I did pay expenses for everybody. They all had their expenses. And I have to tell you this, that nobody had made a film, the cast and crew, nobody had made a film before. So we were all thrown in at the deep end. Most first-time filmmakers make a little 5-minute film, with 1 or 2 actors. Modern day, we made a World War I film with trenches and costumes and even a real baby. The main problem, if you could have called it a problem with Letters Home, was that the location was a long way from where everybody lived, and it was a 2-day shoot. So being the producer, the thought of somebody not being able to get there the second day was like my worst nightmare. So we booked accommodation at Morva Bay Adventure and food as well. So everybody, all 15 of us, went down there the Friday night, then left there on the Sunday evening. And we were really well looked after.
The working title at the moment, I think, is The Forgotten Conscripts. And obviously, I think it's interesting because I knew about the Bevin Boys, and you assume that a lot of people do know about them within primary school and sometimes within secondary education.
The Forgotten Conscript was on a much larger scale than Letters Home, in the fact that we had 3 locations actually, and all the locations were museums. We had St Fagans, the National Museum of Wales, we had the Rhondda Heritage Park, which is a museum, and we also had a small scene in Cowbridge Town Hall, which is also a museum. So dealing with shooting a film in a museum was not easy, but paramount to get the look that we wanted. A few of the actors from Letters Home were in The Forgotten Conscript, plus a lot more actors who I've got to know over the years because they've acted in plays of mine. So the series is already written, so there's 7 60-page scripts. Trying to get somebody to read 1 script, let alone 7, has proved impossible, which is why I've decided to make my own trailer, taking elements from all 7 scripts, putting it together into several trailers, and which also acts as proof of concept. Then these trailers will be sent out to production companies. I always think they could give 5 minutes to look at a trailer rather than 7 hours to read 7 scripts. Because The Forgotten Conscript is a trailer, and it covers a 10-month period of the Bevin Boys in the coal mines. To get that feel of time, the actors had to have constant costume changes. So we ended up hiring 100 items of clothing from Marigold's in Cardiff. So there was a lot of costume changes. And also with a trailer, the actors were filming very small snippets from scenes. So really they didn't have a chance to really get in with that character. What I did for each character, for their scene, I wrote a synopsis of what had happened before this scene and what led up to this scene and what emotions they were feeling coming into this scene. So at least they had some idea of where they were.
I think it's massively difficult really to get an independent film going in South Wales, purely because there's so many aspects and elements to creating a film. It's not just finding the actors, costume, script, lighting, sound, people on AD, and all those kind of elements that go together. It's assembling a team, but also in any profession, you wouldn't be a butcher and work for free. You wouldn't be a physiotherapist and work for free. There's only so much goodwill that people have, really, and as much as you want to help and support people within your industry, at the end of the day, you've got to be able to finance and pay for projects and fund projects. And not everyone can afford to do that individually and personally. So unless you can have a backer, or you've got a crowdfund, or luckily, the Arts Council or whoever might be can see the value really in the project and what you're trying to achieve and where you're trying to go with something and the relevance it can offer to a community or to a nation or worldwide, then ideally, if you can provide those sorts of things, then you can get a project made. But that's not always the case, and sometimes valuable projects don't get the funding they probably deserve, which is difficult, really.
With the Bevin Boy story, I'm doing it because their story needs to be told. It really does. I've entered this script in so many competitions and nobody wants to know. And it really is a story that needs to be told. 48,000 of these boys went down the coal mines. People don't know about it. And I'm going to tell it.
Basically, see from the top. I'm rolling. Scene 17A, take 1.
The way you're not on the feet.
I think we'll keep hold of them and take When I discovered the story of the Bevin Boys, 10 years ago, sorry, researching them was difficult. There wasn't anything, even with the internet. It was pretty useless. So I ended up buying self-published books by surviving Bevin Boys. These tiny little booklets, they've written their own stories. Through my research, I then made friends with Warwick Taylor, who was at the time Vice President of the Bevin Boys Association. He gave me everything he had on the Bevin Boys, and I created a website called The Forgotten Conscript. And to date, it's got 126,000 hits, and so many people have messaged me to say, this is great. You know, my granddad was a Bevin Boy. It's so nice to see their story being told. Well, that's kind of moved on now. Since Warwick died last year, I've started to do presentation on the Bevin Boys. And I did one just before Christmas, my first one, and 2 Bevin Boys attended, which was absolutely amazing. Put me under pressure. Hopefully I'll get it right. But that's how much I want this story out there. You know, I've created a website, I'm doing presentations, and now I've made a trailer.
Well, as a husband, you know, the wife asks you what you to do, and you do it, don't you? So that's the way it goes, really. It always becomes a team effort. And it's knowing and seeing what she wants to do. And I think, like we were saying, it is from the heart she wants to do things, but you need somebody then behind that person to look at the practical elements, because they might not see the practical elements. They're seeing what they want the end result to be.
Well, I think I'm like carrying the banner now for the Bevin Boys, because they do call themselves the Forgotten Conscripts, and I'm going to say this now, the Imperial War Museum in London does nothing on the Bevin Boys. I'm hoping that a producer will give time to have a look at this trailer, realise it's a story that needs to be told, and will contact me for the scripts and make it. Maybe I'll contact Steven Spielberg, I don't know.